But first, I just want to let you know that you do not see my face, unfortunately. I'm in the country. I have rural Wi-Fi with a low bandwidth, and not even my photo would come up. But this is Angela Fox. I'm usually your greeter and your book giver in the mornings of this program on Saturdays with the library's Youth Services Department. So thank you, everyone, for coming this morning. I really appreciate it. This is Mr. Henry's Books. It's a program born from the Anne V. Zarrow Award for Young Readers Literature and is sponsored from the Library Trust and the Anne and Henry Zarrow Foundation. Our winner for the Zarrow Award 2021 is Jason Reynolds, who will visit one classroom and an evening presentation virtually this year in May. Jason visited us right before his enormous success for a program our teen coordinator, Leah Wyan, created, and she can testify to his awesomeness during her speaking later. While we are unable to enjoy our breakfast together this morning in person, I promise our commitment to this program and its success will still come across the screen through our guests today. At the end of our program, we will wrap up with basic information all about the surveys that I typically hand out to you, the curriculum guides and PDFs of today's information, the professional development letter. A lot of those things I will email to you, and how and when to retrieve your books for your classroom that will go to the library branches that you selected in your registrations. And on a side note to the books, please keep in mind, as I am sure that you're well aware of, everything is just a little bit, takes a little bit longer, tends to be a little bit more delayed, particularly with our delivery and our facilities, catching up after the winter storms and people being out, etc. But I will email an announcement of the 4 winners for a box each of Jason's books, the graphic novel version of Long Way Down as well. And then the 1 winner for a virtual classroom visit with Jason. Please remember the Zarrow family funding for this program was designed for the books to be in the hands of your students. They're to keep and mark up, create, wear and tear the way we do when we own something that we love. So on that note, I'm going to introduce my wonderful coworker, Laura. And again, if you have any questions throughout, please enter them in chat and we will pay attention and read them for you. Laura.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. Oh, it's so exciting to see everybody. Normally we'd be eating our delicious breakfasts and all of that, but oh, okay, there's the agenda. Thank you, Sue Ann, to let us know. So Angela gave her welcome. I'm up now. So my name is Laura Rayfield. I'm the Children's Services Coordinator for the Tulsa City County Library System. A billion years ago, my first career, and by billion years ago, I was thinking, it was like, it'll be 28 years coming up. When I graduated from college, I was a teacher. I was a middle school language arts and reading teacher for a couple years. Obviously, did not stay with that. Bless you, those of you who are teaching, but I still have kept a big interest in teaching. My sister's a teacher, my husband's a teacher. It's in my blood. I was a curriculum developer for a few years. I've done some things with teaching, so I'd like to keep up with it. So normally my presentation is presenting the curriculum guide that I create and talking about the teaching aspect. And I just in thinking about teaching, because of the pandemic, I've been cutting my husband's hair for the last year. And, I watched a couple YouTube videos. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I bought the fancy recommended buzz cut thing. I am not a very good hair cutter, even with all of that. It takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of experience, and metaphorically, learning how to cut a man's hair is maybe 1% difficulty of what teachers have to deal with. It is, I think a lot of people think, oh, I could just walk into a classroom tomorrow and be a teacher and I'd be great. I saw that Matthew Perry movie, you know, sure, yeah, I can do that. No, you guys know this. I certainly know this. It's teaching is a complex set of skills. It takes a long time to get really good at it, and a lot of effort. And we appreciate that. The library would want to support you as teachers. Just my little soapbox about how much we love you. So anyway, so my role is always to talk about teaching the book that we choose, that is chosen every year for the Zarrow Award, and writing the curriculum guide. So I just wanted to share the curriculum guide, and you'll get a link to the PDF for this. It's also on our website. Let me pull it up so you can see. Whoops, I'm going to start at the beginning here. So it's about different lesson ideas. I don't give you full lesson plans because, again, I know teachers, you're going to change it anyway and you're going to adapt it to your classroom. So I like to gather things that I think will be helpful and will spark your inspiration to fully develop your own lessons. Jason Reynolds, as we know, he's our 2021 Andy Zarrow Award for Young Readers Literature winner. The book is Long Way Down. So such a good book. I'm curious, and you can put this in chat. If you have your video on, you can raise your hand. How many of you have read at least one book by Jason Reynolds? Okay, we got quite a few. I will tell you, I read one book and it was like the potato chips. It's really hard to stop at one. I read one Jason Reynolds book and then I got the next, and then I got the next, and then I got the next. I haven't read all of them, but I've read pretty much all of them, and a lot of different interviews and seen a lot of different things. He is phenomenal. And every year we have great authors every year, but Jason Reynolds is in a category of his own. And I will tell you a very quick story. So I was reading various books, and especially Long Way Down, I was like, I gave it to my husband. He's a high school teacher. He teaches film and TV and Jinx. And I was like, you just have to read this. You just have to read this. And he read it, and he was like, it's so entranced. He was like, do you have his other books? Can I read can I read his other books? So, you know, Jason Reynolds is phenomenal for kids. Jason Reynolds is phenomenal for any reader and any human being. And I, you know, I think that's true of a lot of authors, but again, he's extraordinary. So somebody who can write for kids and speak to their hearts and their minds, and also speak to the heart and minds of you know, a 60-year-old white man in Oklahoma, is doing something okay. Is doing something right. Okay, so part of the curriculum guide is just getting to know Jason. A lot of you have read him. You've probably seen some of his interviews or read some of his interviews. I chose some of my favorites, but honestly, every single interview that he does is extraordinary. He just beautiful, funny, interesting. I was just re-listening. My favorite is probably an interview he did with Krista Tippett on the radio program, and it's a podcast also called On Being. And it's extraordinary. He has such an interesting background and such a love for kids. And one of the things that really struck me today, in re-listening to that interview, so he said, I love kids so much, and if you love kids, you have to tell them the truth. And that he was talking specifically about racism, because the book, his latest book, is a remix, telling of an adult book about racism and the history of racism. And he said, you tell them the truth. But he also talked about how kids love to laugh. Kids love, and that sometimes children's literature doesn't capture the whole child, that we think of children as half-formed beings. But no, yes, they can be in trauma, they can have circumstances that are not great, but they're looking for the they're looking for the laugh. They're looking for the fullness of life. So just an extraordinary, extraordinary human being too, but a writer. So let me pull up the PowerPoint. The title of my, let's see. Sorry, let me get there. Okay, so the title of mine is How to Harness the Cool Uncle Energy of Jason Reynolds. And I'm talking specifically about that. His website, if you haven't checked it out, some great stuff there. Truly, just Googling Jason Reynolds will get you all kinds of stuff. I wanted to share this. I love this picture of him as a kid. And you just think about that kid growing up to be somebody to connect with other kids. It's extraordinary. And again, Long Way Down. A Long Way Down is so emotionally rich for something that you can read in less than an hour, though I recommend taking longer with it or reading it again. For something like that, and it's poetry, how he creates this incredible world is beyond me. And the language is poetic. The characters are really well developed. The emotions of it, and there is humor, and that's all Jason Reynolds. He, in one of his interviews, in one of the recent interviews, he says, my job is to be the cool uncle, right? He talks about, letting them say whatever you want to say without telling your mama and daddy, and also basically telling them the same things that mama and daddy would tell them, but because he's the cool uncle, he gets away with it and they listen. But he said, but that's it, to bear witness to your life, to the bigness of your life. And I think that's one of the things that makes him phenomenal. He speaks directly to kids as whole being, as whole people, right? He does not think of them as half-formed things. He understands them as whole human beings. Okay, so how do you build on that cool uncle energy? Because listen, if a kid reads even a couple pages or listens to a couple pages, he hooks them. He gets them emotionally, he gets them imaginatively. So the question is, how do you build on that? And I want to step back and say, you don't necessarily have to build on that. Introducing Jason Reynolds and talking about his books, that is enough. So there's different levels of engagement. It is perfectly fine to just let Jason speak to them because he speaks to them. And also literally the audiobook of Long Way Down is extraordinary. He's got this voice, he's got this presence, even in just audio, that it will knock you out if you haven't heard it. Also class discussion. Your kids, there's some books where the kids are like, it's pulling teeth getting them to discuss things. But your kids will want to talk about this book. They will want to engage with it and talk to each other and talk to you about it. The third level of engagement, if you want to build on that interest and that excitement and that engagement, is to introduce embedded nonfiction. And embedded nonfiction just means bringing in related articles, even videos, different things that gives you more information about either to give you background information about what you're reading, or to open up your thinking about that. So I will tell you, there's a curriculum guide out there for Long Way Down that is extraordinary and does a great job with embedding nonfiction. If you just Google, the link's in the PDF, so you'll be able to click it. But if you just Google Long Way Down Curriculum Columbus, the Columbus City Schools, somebody put together this really rich, amazing curriculum. I was quite jealous of it, actually. I looked at it, I was like, I should just drop this in my curriculum guide and not do any extra lesson plans. It's that good. But they do some really extraordinary things in it, and really enriching the story, expanding it, without losing the heart, the emotions, the rich emotions that Jason Reynolds introduces. So embedded nonfiction, it's an idea. It's not a new idea, but I think it's creating a renaissance. There's a terrific book called Reading Reconsidered and bringing rigor to language arts in reading classroom. And one of the ideas is to connect nonfiction with literature study. So one of the reasons to do that, when you pair fiction with nonfiction, it works in different ways. There's kind of inside the bullseye and outside the bullseye. Those are kind of the two terms. So inside the bullseye, when you are embedding nonfiction, it's really to give more background knowledge for what you're reading. So think about, some examples are My Brother Sam is Dead, which is set in the Revolutionary War of the before we became the United States. And you could embed nonfiction about gun ammunitions, and learning about how heavy they were and how difficult it was really will enrich the understanding of kids reading the actual novel. World War II novels, especially set in concentration camps, The Boy with the Striped Pajamas, The Number of the Stars, having that historical understanding really enriches the reading of those books. There's outside the bullseye also, and outside the bullseye is you bring in nonfiction that expands your view. So A Long Way Down is like this. The Outsiders, here's a really great example for The Outsiders. Most kids, they're teenagers, they understand. It's not a difficult, they don't need that background knowledge to see how teenagers interact with each other and different social classes. But one teacher did this amazing thing. They found an article about elephants, particularly adolescent elephants, and how they interact with their slightly older peers. And reading that with The Outsiders just lit everything up. The kids wanted to compare the elephants to the different characters in The Outsiders and what that meant. And so it really enriched both reading the literature and it gave them some extra knowledge in it to look at the world and to look at this novel in a whole new way. So, so thinking about Long Way Down, in my curriculum guide, a couple of the embedded nonfiction ideas I have that you can build on is Dante's Inferno. Now, how can you think about, so Long Way Down, it's a character going from elevator floor to elevator floor and stopping, and a new person comes on each stop. And every person that he meets on the stop, they are people he's known, but they are now dead. So how would Inferno, what do you know about Inferno? I guess this is a big group, I guess. So Inferno is Dante going down to the level, different levels of hell. Now, obviously, the Long Way Down, it's not hell, so that's not a good, that part doesn't go, but it does deal with life and death issues. It does deal with levels, and he does meet people on every level who he interacts with to talk to him. And so the issues of morality and what's right and what to do, very present in that. So it might involve a really interesting conversation. This is not nonfiction, it's fiction, but pairing Long Way Down with A Christmas Carol is also a good connection. A Christmas Carol, he's meeting, a ghost, past, present, future. It's similarly as our character Will meets ghosts and deciding, again, it's a moral question. What am I going to do? And that's the big question as Will goes down the elevator. So just some ideas to think about that. Let's see. And I think, yeah, pretty. The other thing I wanted to share, go back to, back to this. Oops. So, oh yes, the other one is the benefits of crying. So if you read Long Way Down, there's 3 social rules of the community in the novel. 1 is don't cry, 2 is don't snitch, 3 is get revenge. And you can talk about all of those rules. And actually in the Columbus Curriculum Guide, there is an article embedding nonfiction about social mores, in a community like the one in Long Way Down, and how it impacts the behavior. But another one, a really interesting conversation, I think, with your kids would be to introduce the benefits of crying. Why do people cry? What are the physical benefits? What are the emotional benefits? And what is being taken away from these characters by being told not to cry? And also, it lends itself well to some writing, or at least outlining, talking about why crying maybe is not allowed in this community, but also why it benefits. There's a really great, this is a free site called The Writing Revolution. They have these excellent templates that are free, and you just have to sign up with your email to get them. It's a book worth looking at. It's a really great program teaching kids step by step, writing sentences and then paragraphs. And part of it is creating outlines. Now, the kids don't necessarily need to use the outlines to write. They can be great discussion organizers, way to organize the discussion about topics. This is the topic sentence and a concluding sentence you would write together, but you could present the topic sentence of, although there are psychological benefits of crying, the characters in A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds choose to follow the don't cry rule for several reasons. So you guys can talk about what are those reasons. You can provide the reasons, or it can be part of your discussion, and just a way to organize either writing or a discussion. A couple of read-alikes I want to mention. Walter Dean Myers is great Walter Dean Myers, and kind of the grandfather of a lot of these novels that take seriously young African-American lives and their struggles, and also not just their struggles, their humanity as well. Monster is his most famous, but he's written a lot. He wrote a lot of different excellent novels. And I believe I read in an interview, actually, he was a father of a friend of Jason Reynolds. And so, I mean, inspiration. I just love that Walter Dean Myers is doing this, meets with Jason Reynolds, and who knows who's next? Who knows who Jason Reynolds is impacting now, who will be writing later, and it's very exciting to think about that. A couple others, there's a great, very recent 2019, I think, collection called Black Enough, different stories, different authors. And that's a great way to introduce your kids to different authors, and they often have novels as well, and so they can pursue reading more, including Code Booth as part of the Black Enough. A couple other favorites, Tyler Johnson was here, and the Poet X, Elizabeth S. Leah, you're gonna have to help me. How do I say that?
Elizabeth Acevedo. Yeah.
There you go. So extraordinary stuff. So take a look at the curriculum guide. Obviously, read Jason Reynolds. There's a lot of great stuff out there. He's extraordinary. If my favorite interview is the On Being, and it's online, you can find that. And just find it On Being, and Jason Reynolds. That's my name. That's my email. That's my phone number. We're not in the office right now, but you can leave a message and I will get back to you if you don't feel like writing an email. And I thank you very much. I have not looked at any of the chat. Are there any questions? Are we waiting for questions? Okay. So we have the next speaker is amazing, and I will pass it off to her and mute myself.
Am I supposed to start now?
Go for it, Inka.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't have a formal introduction. I'm just like,
Fine.
this awesome person speaking, but you are an awesome person, and now I want to.
Absolutely. So I did see a question. Sorry, Inka, I'll jump in. I did see a question. Are all the books just listed in the curriculum guide? And they are. So everything that Laura shared, you will get that link emailed to you as a part of the wrap up. And our next speaker, for those of you who have attended this workshop before, you know we always want to provide those connections to extend with your students past the book in front of them into wider thoughts and themes. So today's speaker is a doctoral student from TU, from the Department of Archaeology, and I really think that you're going to enjoy listening to her speak about the wider community connections and Tulsa specific things that you can talk about with your students with about community, about resilience, and about archaeology, which I think your students will really enjoy. So Nkemike is a TU student and also doctoral candidate and also one of my friends, and we're very pleased to have her as a part of our workshop today. So Nkem, take it away, and you can pull up your screen and we'll just monitor the chat for you for any questions that come up.
Perfect. Thank you, Leah. Hi, my name is Enki Mike. I am, like Leah said, a PhD student at TU. I got my start in academia as a history student. I got my master's in history, and my PhD will be in historical archaeology. So let's get started. I'm gonna share my screen now. Okay, so as I was like in this, process of like putting together this presentation, and just in the last like 20 minutes, I was looking at my presentation and at the title and all, just the way it's sort of like configured. And I instantly thought that I kind of did myself and you all a disservice by this title, because I think, it's not only, I don't just study generational trauma. I studied like resilience and community resistance and what that can look like in the physical manifestations of that. So this is not just the archaeology of generational trauma, right? It's the archaeology of generational trauma and the ways in which community resilience can look. So we're gonna get started. I started my archaeology career thinking I was gonna do archaeology in the Caribbean, studying enslavement. Here I am, my advisor, Dr. Alicia Odewale, she worked in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands at this former plantation called Estate Little Princess. And so a little thing to know about plantation archaeology is that it's very much a part of historical archaeology for a really long time. Archaeologists were studying plantations, but they were not including the enslaved people that lived and worked there. So over the past couple decades or so, has enslaved Africans been studied archaeologically. And so that's what I thought on plantations. And so that's what I thought that I was going to be doing for my academic career. And here I am at Estate Little Princess using a drone and doing some archaeology. So that's how I thought this was going to work out. That's not how it happened. So it was Dr. Odewale who thought through the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Commission was asked to do sort of the archaeology of Black Wall Street. And because I'm from Tulsa and I grew up here, she asked me if I wanted to be the graduate student on that particular project. And I said, of course, because the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre is something that like I have studied on and off for, I don't know, my entire academic career. It seems like at every stage I've written some sort of paper or something like that about it. So it seemed to make sense for me. And as someone who is Black and from Tulsa, it's something that's really important to me. And as someone who hopes to one day, teach or something, it seems like something that I should be constantly interrogating and engaging with, because it's as we like uncover, as people continue to like engage with this topic, we're uncovering new things and we're all able to like engage with each other in complex ways. And so about this topic and what generational trauma can really look like, and sort of like grabbing that at its roots and sort of excavating that and presenting that to the community for them to be able to sort of I don't know, make decisions for themselves. And that's what that's what I in essence try to do with my research. So one of the most important components of my research, and I did try to read as much of Jason Reynolds' book as I possibly could, but I could only get through so much. But it's the concept of memory. I treat memory as something that is tangible, as something that is real, as something that can be, that has a physical manifestation. Even though that's relatively new in my discipline, it's something that I engage with, and I engage with it because for Black people in particular, and I think we see this with the race massacre, that the land was bulldozed, right? So it's not always, you can't always look at Archer and Greenwood and sort of understand the fullness of what Greenwood was. So I rely on memory in order to sort of bring that forth. I'm not trying to say that, what I'm in essence trying to say is that everyone's memory, what everyone remembered or what they were told is valid, that there's something that's important about being able to talk about where you come from and where you are. And so that's why I use memory as this tool and as a line of evidence for communities. I forgot to say at the beginning of this presentation, which I'm so sorry, that I don't just study the Tulsa Race Massacre, I study the archaeology of race massacres. So I go around the country and I visit with communities, and I sort of try to, communities who have used archaeology to engage the race massacres that have happened there, and how the communities are sort of using archaeology as a tool of resilience. So that's what I go around the country and do. The other site that I study is in Rosewood, Florida. They had a race massacre there in 1923. And then the other race massacre that I study is the Springfield, Illinois race massacre that happened in 1908. So on my left, these are sort of the tags that were left, that Black people, whenever they were interned during the 1920 race massacre, were sort of given. And then on the right is a booklet, and it's the Seminole Tribune from Rosewood, and it includes articles of people testifying to the memory, to the events of the 1923 Rosewood Race Massacre. So for me, memory is something that is tangible because it has to be, because we don't as I'm doing my research, I'm seeing that artifacts exist in each of these communities because archaeology, our conventional idea about what archaeology is, it's happening there, right? But there's an unevenness to like think artifacts at each of these communities. But what isn't uneven is the memory of and the ways in which the memories are displayed. So it's in these tags, right? It's in newspaper articles. It's in census data and all this other stuff, all these other things that that people are sort of creating and putting their ideas and their histories onto paper. So that's why memory is an incredibly important component to what I do. Second, it's the landscape. The landscape is an integral part. This right here, I think it's really important to show, because this is an image of the race massacre in Springfield in 1908. And what you see on, I guess, my right is they built sort of this site of commemoration that literally took those images, like took that building that was burned and almost destroyed and sort of remade it and reclaimed it as the physical manifestation of resilience. That community looks nothing like it did in 1908, right? But they took this, something that I think we would think of as representing the devastation of that community, and they took it and they reclaimed it and they remade it. And now it stands for resilience, and now it stands for power for that Black community. And so and we see it right here in Greenwood as well. We see them building things like Greenwood Rising. We see this resurgence of Black businesses on Greenwood. We see on Greenwood and Archer, we see all of these things. And although these communities may not look like they did 100 years ago, right? I'm not even sure if for people in the Black community, if that's the point, as much as the point is to say, hey, we're still here, like we didn't disappear. And the landscape has the ability to sort of physically show that, especially the methodology that I engage with is Black geographies. And the Black geographer that sort of coined that term, her name is Catherine McKittrick, and her goal is to map Black people on the landscape because Black people have been considered ungeographic. And so her goal is to now make Black people geographic and the importance of geography to Blackness and the relationship between the two. And so now we're going to get into materiality. And I thought that these three images were really important to show. The image on the right came from Springfield, or the image on my left, I'm sorry, came from Springfield. The image in the middle came from Tulsa, and then the one on the left came from Rosewood. And like I said initially, that like the materiality is important because it shows how the like differences and yet the similarities of these three communities. So what ties them, there's very little that is similar about these three communities that I study. Springfield, Tulsa was by far the largest, right? The Tulsa Race Massacre is considered the largest event of anti-Black violence in the history of this country, besides slavery. And so the point, what I'm trying to do in essence is like, all of these communities are tied together with, they're tied together by these anti-Black race massacres, but they are unique in and of themselves. What was happening in Springfield wasn't the same thing that was happening in Tulsa, wasn't the same thing that was happening in Rosewood. Like all of these communities are drastically different. And this like sort of Coptic cross shows like the diversity, the like religious, like the Coptic cross is like the physical manifestation of like the religious diversity of Springfield, of that community. It was a little more, I think, racially mixed. It was still an incredibly poor community, a working class community, but that cross shows the like religious diversity that exists within that community. And then the pennies in the center are from Tulsa, right? And they're burned pennies that now are housed at the African American Museum of History and Culture in Washington, D.C. So they're on display there. And then the image on the right is from Rosewood, and that's Sherry Dupree. Sherry Dupree is the woman holding this tool, which I'll get into in a second. She started the Real Rosewood Foundation to tell that she helped actually the survivors and the descendants of the Rosewood Race Massacre get financial compensation or reparations in the early in the mid 90s. And that tool in her hand is a turpentine tool because Rosewood had a really large and a number of Black people were employed in the turpentine industry. And so the materiality it brings all of these communities together, yet it also shows like what's different about them, what's valuable about them. You know, there's whenever I think of Greenwood and I think of Greenwood under its other name is Black Wall Street, nothing makes more sense than these pennies, right? Like nothing makes more sense than that. And so, as I was like reading through Jason Reynolds' book, I was in the way that he was talking about and describing the gun and describing like the relationship between people, and this is what I do as an archaeologist, right? Like the relationship between people and things and how like things work on people. They like change people. They have power over people and people have power over things, but that only can exist because of the relationship between people and things. And so this last image, this is the end of my presentation, but I wanted to end with this last image because this is at the park that's on Greenwood. I can't remember the name right now, it just escaped me because I'm a little nervous, but it's across the street from Langston. And a friend and I were out there last summer, and we noticed that all of this like material like littered the ground. And these are ceramic sherds and glass fragments. And they were literally just like on top of the ground. And I couldn't help but think that as we're like looking at this, and as I'm like thinking about my research, and as I'm thinking about writing, and as I'm thinking about trauma, and as I'm thinking about resilience, that like the history never goes away. Like as we, even if we don't want to remember, the environment like forces us to, right? Like through erosion, through kids playing, through activities happening, right? Like these artifacts, this materiality like brought itself to the surface. It wanted to be known. It like wants to be engaged with. And so as an archaeologist and as a Black person living in Tulsa during this time, I think it's really important, you know, forgetting offers us an immediate comfort, but remembering offers us it has the ability to offer us, even though it's hard and even though it's painful, it offers us in essence, like an ability to gain power and to display resilience. So yeah.
Thank you so much, and Kim, this was really very insightful. I know we have a couple of questions, and I will just start out with the very first one that came through. They were wondering if you were finding similar themes out of what you just presented coming out of these events.
So I deal with legacy collections. So they are, I don't necessarily, I have dug, you know, as an archaeologist, I showed you the pictures, but archaeology for me is like a last resort because it is detrimental to the environment. As soon as you take something out, you're separating something from the environment, right? And so, and it's incredibly costly and all these other sorts of things. So the collections that I'm dealing with are collections that have already been excavated by a previous archaeologist, just to get that out of the way. So we here in Tulsa, my advisor and her Mapping Historical Trauma project, we haven't done a whole lot of actual digging. We've done some, you know, we've used ground penetrating radar and all these other sort of things to see if there are anomalies under the ground and all these other sorts of things. So we haven't necessarily the same, you know, in Springfield has a very large and robust artifact collection. Rosewood doesn't have that. So we're not necessarily finding, or I guess I'm not necessarily finding the same things. And the communities are so different, although yes, similar in very interesting ways. I'm not necessarily finding the same things as much as I'm discovering or finding the same sort of where. So in Springfield, there are like these like dining sets that were found, that were excavated, but they have like soot on them, or like they're burned. And the same thing is the case in Rosewood. Rosewood has only a handful of precious artifacts, but one of them are bullets that were fired into a building that no longer exists, but that was the site of conflict during that race massacre. And then the same thing in Tulsa, right? So those pennies, those burnt pennies, are also were found here in Tulsa. So I'm not necessarily finding the same thing, but I am finding the same sort of like I am finding evidence of like violence, and I'm finding evidence of fires, and I'm finding evidence of bullets, or not bullets, but of just that sort of like damage that I think we can attribute to an event like an anti-Black race massacre.
Okay. Katrina Morrison asked if you have an opinion on the accuracy point of view of Dreamland burning.
So Dreamland Burning is the young adult book by Jennifer Latham that was released a few years ago. I'm not sure if I know YA isn't as much here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. And I
Yes.
actually didn't realize that that was a YA book.
So I've spoken to Jennifer Latham, and I do have the book, but I think it goes back to what I was saying about memory. And I was talking to someone whose family has deep ties to Greenwood even before the massacre. And I think we're never going to get to what actually happened, right? I think there are all of these systems in place and all of these things that have happened to Tulsa, to Rosewood, to Springfield that have made sure that, that these events were in essence erased. So I don't think I'm as much interested in the facts, because I'm not sure if we're going to ever be able to like get to that. I think what I'm much more interested in are the ways in which people understand their history and what they were able to find out about it. Because I'm just not sure. I think there are just too many barriers in place. But I think that's the point of like doing research and doing scholarship, right? It's to gather up as much data as possible, come up with have a question, gather as much data as possible, and then sort of figure out if like you're able to answer your question with the data that you have. And so I'm not saying that research isn't important. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think research was important. I'm not saying that that I don't think the truth is unimportant. I'm just saying that I'm not sure if we're ever going to get to what the truth is. But I think that we're only made better by books like Jennifer Latham's. We're only made better by books like Hannibal Johnson and Eddie Faye Gates and Scott Ellsworth and all of these people who, given the data that they had at the time, or given the information that they had at the time, they produced something that was really important and really valuable for the community to like understand itself a little bit better. So I think that's what I have to say about that.
Yes. And if any teachers have the opportunity to read anything from Eddie Faye Gates or Hannibal Johnson, please, take that opportunity. Are there any other questions? Did I miss any, Leah?
I want to piggyback on making the connection from Nkem's presentation about material culture and in Long Way Down. There are several objects, not just the gun. The gun is probably the most important, but there's the plastic bag that carries the mother's psoriasis cream. And he's holding that bag. His brother, who's shot and killed, is holding that bag when he's killed. And the psoriasis cream she has because of the trauma that she's lived through of seeing so many of her loved ones killed. It's a beautiful image, but it's a material object. There's the video camera that the uncle has, the uncle who shot and killed also. And there's so many objects, so many connections. So I really, really appreciate your highlighting that. And I think it's kind of a perfect, speaking of embedding nonfiction, this is a perfect opportunity to make those connections with kids and studying that. So thank you so much.
Yes, we were very fortunate to have her here today to talk about her research. Does anyone have any other questions directly for Nkem while she is with us today? And I'm just going to take a second to scroll through. Leah, if you have anything you're seeing.
I think you found all of them. I dropped a couple of links in the chat.
Yes.
As Nkem Ike was talking, I dropped in the links to the Real Rosewood Foundation project, to Catherine McKittrick's website, so you can follow along and kind of look further, as well as catalog links for books by Eddie Faye Gates and Hannibal Johnson. So if you all need to click on that and just have it open in another tab so you can peruse that later, and we'll
absolutely
try to gather that up for the follow-up email as well.
Yes, and thank you for Nkem for mentioning our local treasures as well, our local authors with this type of work. Is there anything else, and Kim, that you would like to say before we go to Leah, or anybody have any other questions? Just, I'll take one few seconds there if you do.
This is Donna Bishop, and I have one question. And I don't know, there's no real solution to it, but I think it is how to get the message out, how to share this news and information. And I just feel like maybe there should be more consistent, or somehow we build in more programming consistency. But I don't really know how to do that.
Like from the public library, or
Well, no, not necessarily that.
like the community in general?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there's still so many kids that really don't know anything about it. So
Not
Yeah.
just kids,
from a youth standpoint.
adults too.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that that's a great question for us all to think about in our own work with youth, and think about how we can highlight and bring attention from our own platforms that we have. And I am going to share some different things about community programming
Yes.
in the next segment as well.
Yes. So I just want to take the opportunity one more time to thank Ann Kim for being with us today. This has added so many layers to our workshop, and thank you for her research and her time. And yes, I will have all of this available to you so you can rewatch again. And if there are any questions, you can direct them to me and I will get them to Ann Kim as well. Thank you again. And now I'm going to pass it over to Leah Wyand.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And the chat is full of love for you, and Kim. So thank you for spending time with us today with this. So now we're going to talk about some library resources, and a few of these we will go between slides and some of the library's website. So I'm the Teen Services Coordinator for the library. I know a lot of you guys from past Mr. Henry's workshops, and also just from seeing you at different library events. So thank you for continuing to be such a champion of the public library. We really appreciate you championing the public library's resources to your students. And we appreciate the opportunity to support your schools and to support the school libraries for all of our school librarian partners who are on here today. Thank you so much for just partnering with us whenever we are able to do that, and helping lead your students to public library resources and programming. So one thing that I always like to talk about is that you can find pretty much anything at the library, even cake pans. We have a collection that checks out. So we have all of the things you think we have, and also the things you don't think we have, we've got, including just all sorts of amazing online resources. So particularly relevant for this presentation and workshop, I'm going to talk a little bit about some databases for primary and secondary sources as you're doing research that might be on themes related to Long Way Down, but also on projects completely unrelated to the Mr. Henry's Books workshop, but just more generally in your curriculum. We have print and digital materials for research. We have, live homework help. We have local history resources, which I think will be a great thing to direct your students toward for the topic of the Tulsa Race Massacre, especially, not least considering the centennial commemoration events, and, great new resource guides and kind of more accessible to the public, different curriculum resources and things like that. We also have genealogy research tools. We have test prep tutorials. We have our resource centers. The African American Resource Center is housed out of Reedesville Regional Library and does have some specialized materials that are local to that branch specifically, which you can now go and browse in person at the Reedesville Regional Library, as well as still having curbside service. We additionally have the American Indian Resource Center at Zarrow Regional Library and the Hispanic Resource Center at Martin Regional Library, and our Genealogy Resource Center is at Hardesty Regional Library. So beyond educational materials, we also have materials for fun and for personal pursuits and learning. We have digital magazines, we have ebooks, downloadable audiobooks, language learning software, and more. So today we're going to talk about a couple of the databases as well as where you can find more information on our website and more events. So one thing that I want to draw your attention to is on our website, we do have a local history section where you can find a lot of different resources and links to other libraries and areas and collections about the Tulsa Race Massacre, as well as TCCL-led centennial commemoration events. Now, the whole community, I remember, Donna, you were asking earlier about programming, the whole community is doing a ton of centennial commemorative programming right now, and TCCL is a part of that. So I'm going to go ahead and share, if I can pull it up, our webpage, our homepage. I'm just going to put all the internet words out into the world at the same time, apparently. Our homepage is tulsalibrary.org, and right up on the top display cards here, you can see we have some information about remote resources, coronavirus information, and also a card of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre resources. But where this goes is to this static URL that I do have on the slide and that you will receive in the follow-up email. So it's our Tulsa and Oklahoma History Resources Guide, and you can visit this with your students and show them. We have at the top a bunch of resources highlighted about the Race Massacre, including background on where you can find these resources. We have photographic collections, and we also link out to other collections that are not housed within Tulsa City County Library, such as those housed at the Library of Congress and other locations. We have timelines and links to many different other resources, including the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission, which I think is a very important and valuable thing to share with your students. We have the riot timeline, the massacre timeline. Some of these links are named in ways that do not reflect the current nomenclature, but were established in the 90s or earlier, before terminology was changed. So that is why there is some inconsistency in naming. So we do have other resources around town, from grants, which I think are a great thing to look at for your classroom to find more resources or even funding for your teaching. We have many curriculum resources that are linked, many different articles, and also, let's see, we have some different special collections, and the books and documents is a great tab to look at for more further reading and also watching on this topic. So local history resources are up here on our website, and particularly talking about programming, the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission has many events, and you can click on the link at this website to see more. And then we have many virtual events that are TCCL hosted. And on the PowerPoint, I just clipped out a quick snippet of some upcoming ones, but you can see all of the different events that we have here, including talks with different authors. Hannibal Johnson, I want to draw your attention to that event, which will be Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 6 p.m. live via Zoom. So you can register for that and figure out how to watch it on this webpage, or you can email any of us at the library and we will help you get registered for that. So I encourage you to share those resources and events with your students, but also just with your network more generally. So let's see. Going back here, and Mira Jacob especially, I really loved this book, Good Talk. So you might check that out. It's actually an illustrated, like, graphic novel type format, but in a really interesting art medium. So I thought that was very cool. So when you're doing database research with the public library, where you'll start is just go to our website, tulsalibrary.org, and on the top heading, you can just click on research. Then the research page comes up, and you can just click on that human figure looking at the world that contains all the research databases, and click on databases to go there. So the first database that we're going, and you will get a login screen. If you are not on the library's premises, you'll get a remote database login screen. you'll put in your last name and then your library card number. For those TPS students 6th through 12th grade, their student ID number is a library card number. So they can just type that in and still reach the databases in that way. And if anybody has any trouble with this, if any of their student cards are not working properly, you can just email me and we'll get that resolved. And you can also apply to get a library card and get a temporary number automatically generated and emailed to you. So while you are waiting for your physical card, you can go ahead and start using databases. So one database that I think is great for primary and secondary sources, overviews, and for working with your secondary students is the African American Experience database. So when you click on it and log in, what you will pull up is the American Mosaic collection of databases. And this ABC Clio database suite includes, among other things, the African American Experience. And you can explore by time periods, you can do keyword searches, you can do subject searches. And like all of these databases, it also includes a lot of, if you see in kind of the lower left-hand corner of that screen, the academic success corner. So that can help your students figure out how to properly cite, how to do research, how to examine sources. So this is a fantastic database to pair with research that you do or curriculum that you do about the Tulsa Race Massacre, about Black Wall Street, about that period of Tulsa history, or about African American history in several different eras. The delineations here of the different eras are obviously, like with any historical delineations, time doesn't like stop in 1991 and start in 1992. So things do overlap, but this is a kind of a broad look at some different ways to create themes around historical periods. But you can also talk with your students about how that is a construction in and of itself by researchers or by database creators. So another database that I'll draw your attention to is Issues and Controversies. And the great thing about this database is that for any of those English language arts persuasive essays, this is a great database to use to talk about the different pros and cons of policies on artificial intelligence or on climate change or any of a huge variety of topics. And one thing in particular on Issues and Controversies that I want to point out, that this database has curriculums. So there are lesson plans that you can borrow from and get inspired by. There are many different tools to help your students understand how to avoid plagiarism, how to analyze historical documents. There are some great worksheets on here. So this is another great database that has a lot of tools that go beyond even just the first level of finding articles and informational items on here. There are also educator tools and student tools. So the next database / service that I want to talk about, I hope you all have heard about before, because if you haven't, then I don't think I've been doing my job, because we are trying to just blanket Tulsa in this information. Through Tulsa Library, we have access to Homework Help Now. And what Homework Help Now is it is a service that provides live online tutoring from 2 to 11 p.m. on weekdays for your students. And that's K through 12, but also college level courses. So there's also the writing lab, which is really fantastic. You can turn in an essay and request either a content review or a grammar, usage, and mechanics review. And that is usually turned back around to you within about 24 hours. I'm going to show you kind of some examples of what that looks like. So when you log in with a library card and create an account, you have access to live tutoring. And this tutoring is also available in delivered in Spanish language, either through text or speech. So all of the tutors are background checked and certified. But this is a great thing to offer your students and also to offer parents and guardians and families as a way to help support their students. So there's the writing lab, there's Skills Surfer, there's worksheets, there's practice tests. I really encourage you guys to look at this and mess around in it and see what might be useful for your students. I also like, for the older students, the e-parachute feature. so that students can take a look at different college majors and careers and start to think about what might interest them by getting that kind of interest inventory and all that. So you can find a lot of explanatory, like quick explanatory videos for this on our Niche Academy site. And I do have the direct link on this slide, and you're going to get the PDF that has all of these slides in the links. So the Niche Academy, the videos about Homework Help Now are going to be really useful if you want to embed that on your Canvas site maybe, so your students can get a quick, 2-minute explainer of how Homework Help Now works or how they can use it. So I definitely encourage you to click on that and see how that might look as well. So this is what the writing feedback looks like. One of my friends who has just returned to complete her degree through OSU Tulsa actually used this service recently. So she has turned in this essay, and it's a sociology class. And she graciously let me take screenshots from the feedback so that I could show you guys. This is what it looks like. First off, the BrainFuse provider response form has general notes about organization, about development, about what major themes or issues are. And then in line in the essay, in a different, in brackets and different color, there will be kind of leading questions that don't say something like you need to use an ellipsis here, definitely, but it might say something like, what punctuation mark might you use here? How might you improve this? To try to help kind of spark that thing. They won't say you need to restate your thesis in exactly this way. They will say your thesis is unclear. A thesis statement is blah, blah, blah. So that is really useful feedback from the writing lab, and students can turn in their essay as many times as they want to help get feedback. And they can get that feedback either on content or on grammar, usage, and mechanics. So if you have students that really want a lot of extra support with writing, this is a great tool for them, whether they are in a 4,000 level sociology class or whether they are in second grade. So we also have a lot of self-directed learning resources, and the one that I'm going to talk about today is lynda.com. So if you go to our library site in programs and services, you can click on online learning. And you can find all sorts of resources, including lynda.com. So when you go to lynda.com, you do have to sign in with a library card number and then whatever password you have created. It's not the same necessarily as your library account password. But the reason that I always like to talk about lynda.com is because you guys have been asked to learn just an absolute ton of new software platforms in a very short amount of time, and so have your students. And there are a lot of different professionally produced videos on how to use these different tools and how to kind of look at tips and tricks and maybe get little extra bits of knowledge out of this. So whether you are using Canvas or maybe OneNote or Google Classroom or Moodle or any learning management system, there are a lot of different resources there that might be useful to you. And also, this isn't just for you as teachers, it's also for your students, because if any of your students, if you say, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, I am going to be a YouTuber. I am going to be the next Jenna Marbles or your Akila Hughes or whoever, then you can say, great, you know what? I honor that. I honor that, that desire that you have and that passion. And here is a tool that you can use to help learn how to be a more professional YouTuber and get more clicks on your videos. Because it's really important to take our youth seriously and what they want to do and what they are interested in pursuing. And you know what? Being a YouTuber is a completely viable career nowadays. And even if your student doesn't end up being a professional YouTuber, what they very well might do is end up being a social media marketing person for an organization or a content creator or a video editor. All these things are really really possible viable careers. So lynda.com is not just for you, but it's also for your students. Another resource that is for you and your students is your next great read and your next great read for teens. So if you're ever wondering, what should I read next? Always just ask a librarian. I know some of you are librarians and you probably have, got a ton of books on your TBR list, but what if we could add more? We can always add more. There are always more books. But also, it's just fun to get this guide because it's this personalized deep dive into you as a reader and what we think you might like, with links to the catalog. So if you tell us, or if a teen tells us, I really love manga and sports and cooking, but I really hate romance and I don't want any actual fantasy or something like that, we'll create a personalized reading guide of 4 to 5 authors and 8 to 10 books that your students can check out, whether that's Fence or Please or Haikyuu for those manga fans, or whether that is something related to the classics that somebody really enjoys reading. We got one teen recently who, on the question that we asked, what are 3 to 5 books or authors that you don't enjoy reading? They just put Shakespeare, 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 Shakespeare. So I think we got them coming straight off of maybe like a quarter 9-week project or something like that for babies. But we will get you whatever you want to read, and we'll avoid anything you don't want to read. And there's so much out there to read. You can use our apps to read magazines. You can use them to watch TV episodes. I mean, if you want to catch up on Doc Martin, you can stream episodes of that on Hoopla. If you or your students are really into graphic novels or keeping up with the latest DC releases, we've got that digitally as well. And the great thing about Hoopla in particular is anybody can check out the same thing at the same time. So some of our ebook services only one user at a time, but with Hoopla, as many users as you want. So Hoopla is a great one for doing a classroom read together because the whole class could check out the same item. Now, we had talked earlier about events, and we have a great many events for the centennial commemoration, for the Tulsa Race Massacre centennial commemoration, and we also have events and classes ongoing all the time. March is an especially big month for our American Indian Resource Center with our Festival of Words programming. We have our Festival of Words Writers Award next Saturday, March 6th. And I really invite you to tune into that streaming on our YouTube channel, because Tommy Orange, who is a fabulous, amazing author, is going to be accepting that 2021 American Indian Writers Award from TCCL. But we also have things like teen hangouts. We have group Among Us gaming hour. We have Kiowa language classes. We have virtual escape rooms. We have yoga. We have so many different classes, performances, and events. And I think that they could be very interesting to you and to your students, no matter what age group we're talking about. We've got something for them. So just check that out at our website. And I appreciate you guys listening to me run through our resources. And I'm going to just take a quick look at the chat and see where we are at and if there's anything that you guys have. Now, we will email out all of our resources. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so we can wrap up. And I believe, Angela, if you are able to. Oh,
nope, it's okay. If you can wrap that up for me.
Oh, sure will. Okay, fantastic. So we have some great chat about presentations and different links. People are sharing resources. Fantastic. Okay, so just to finish up this workshop and kind of wrap up and let you know some of the things to be looking for, we are going to select 4 educators from this workshop, from the first 60 educators who signed up for the workshop. We'll select 4 of you to receive 20 copies apiece of Long Way Down, the graphic novel. Because I don't think we said this yet, but the great thing about Long Way Down and using this in your classrooms is that I think it's also a really interesting book to talk about how stories can be adapted to different mediums, right? Because Long Way Down has been turned into a stage play, an award-winning stage play. And also, Long Way Down has been turned into a graphic novel, and it's going to be turned into a film produced by John Legend. So this is just an exciting way that you can talk about all the different types of stories that types of mediums that stories can be told through. So we are going to select 4 educators to win 20 copies apiece of the graphic novel, Long Way Down. Then we are also going to select 1 educator who will win a virtual classroom visit. That's Thursday, May 6th. It is on Thursday, 2021 this year. When Jason Reynolds comes and visits us, we will do a classroom visit in the morning and then the public event in the evening. So 1 educator will win that virtual classroom visit, and we will email you the first week of March, next week, to let you know if you are the person who has been drawn for that. Thursday, May 6th for that. So then what you are also, of course, going to receive are the books, and we're going to be distributing those to the libraries that you selected when you registered. That'll be the box of 44 copies plus an extra packet of 6 copies, so everybody will get the 50 copies that are meant for your students. And your email from Angela next week will include the feedback survey. So we really hope that you fill that out, because that does help us with our granting and funding bodies to continue to do this workshop each year, hopefully in person in 2022. You'll also receive links to the curriculum guide and the classroom resources. You'll receive a link to the recording of today's workshop, as well as the professional development form. That will come through as an attachment as well if you need that for your professional development records. And I just want to say again that Mr. Henry's Books is sponsored by Tulsa City County Library through a grant from the Tulsa Library Trust and the Ann and Henry Zarrow Foundation. And it's hosted in partnership with Tulsa Kids magazine. So we really appreciate our sponsors and partners in this endeavor. So some quick information about the Ann V. Zarrow Author Award. The Ann Zarrow Author Award for Young Readers Literature will take place in the evening on Thursday, May 6th at 7 p.m. And Jason Reynolds will speak about his life and his works. But also, as we do every year, we're going to present the awards for the Young People's Creative Writing Contest. So if any of your students have maybe some entries, last-minute entries that they would like to send in, we have just a couple days left of the contest, today and tomorrow. So we are accepting online entries through February 28th at 11:59 p.m. All of that. So if you have any students that already have some poetry, some short stories in their back pocket, they can definitely go ahead and still submit that through the end of the contest, and they will get their awards at the Zarrow Award event in early May. So I believe that is everything. We will send that follow-up email next week. Thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate you coming to this workshop and listening to our speakers. And if you have any questions, we've shared contact information. You can email Angela and she'll follow up with whoever is appropriate. And we will be sending you more communication coming soon. But if you have any other questions for us, you can put that in the chat. Otherwise, I hope you have a really great rest of your weekend. And I hope that you enjoy thinking about how to use the works of Jason Reynolds in the classroom. Oh, I'm seeing the chat. Thank you guys so much. Oh, I appreciate that. You guys are really the best. That's why we do this every year. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely. Oh, thank you guys. We'll see you later. Oh, thank you, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye, y'all. Bye, Sean. See you later. Suzanne, I think you can probably stop recording.